Last Thursday, it happened in Chicago. A shooter killed 2 people and injured 3 others. That was one of 3 mass shootings, all on the same day in Chicago and Philadelphia and Indianapolis. The next day, on Friday, it happened near a restaurant in Maryland. A shooter injured 4. On Saturday, it happened in 6 different places, 6 mass shootings in one day, including at a graduation party in Manchester, New Hampshire. On Sunday, on Mother's Day, there were 4 mass shootings in Pennsylvania, Indiana, Alabama, and Louisiana. This week, on Monday, it happened in Farmington, New Mexico. An 18-year-old opened fire at random with at least 3 guns. He shot 9 people, killing 3 of them. The victims were all women over the age of 70, and among them were a mother and her daughter. On Tuesday, it happened in San Antonio, and then again today in San Antonio. 2 mass shootings in the same city in less than 48 hours. In the past 7 days, there have been 17 mass shootings in America. According to a new Axios Ipsos poll, gun violence is now the top public health concern among Americans. More than COVID, more than cancer, more than smoking, more than fentanyl. Gun violence is the #1 health concern in the entire country, period. And what is Congress focused on? Policing trans girls' participation in school sports, or at least that is the priority for House Republicans, who passed a bill last month to block trans women and girls from women's sports. And yet, if you squint your eyes hard enough, all hope is not lost. Today, Senator Raphael Warnock, alongside some of his colleagues in the Senate and the House, held a press conference demanding action.
We can't wait another 30 years for Congress to pass meaningful, common sense gun safety legislation. And we can't wait for the next headline, the next tragic flashpoint. Because there is a profound way in which these tragedies are happening every single day.
Joining us now is Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia. Senator Warnock, thank you for being here this evening. I was not aware of this statistic, and I wonder what you think of it. Gun owners more likely identify as Republicans. They are white, they are male, and they live in rural areas. Almost half of white men in this country, 48%, say they own a gun. We talk a lot about the intransigence over gun safety reform as being a result of the NRA, but it seems to me that until the actual demographics of gun ownership change, it's possible this issue keeps running into roadblocks. Do you think that has anything to do with this?
Well, good to be here with you tonight, Alex. And as we were pointing out earlier today in this press conference, we are confronted with a very serious and critical issue around gun violence. And I began to raise this issue in the Congress most recently a couple of weeks ago, because as we were witnessing all of the kind of carnage that you just described day after day, and the terrible flashpoints like what we saw in Nashville, Tennessee, there was reticence and radio silence in Congress. And I'm afraid that we have normalized this kind of carnage happening every single day in America. The good news is that most Americans, red, yellow, white, brown, and black, everybody on both sides of the aisle, nearly 90% of Americans feel that we need to pass universal background checks. There's a path to get that, quite frankly, doesn't reflect what's going on in the country.
But do you think, I mean, the base of the Republican Party, a lot of the reason nothing gets done in Congress is because this does not seem to be an issue of utmost importance for Republicans. And when you look at who owns guns, it's white male Republicans in rural areas. That's a core part of the Republican base. Do you think that there's a connection between those two things?
I think there is a lot of misinformation around this whole issue around gun safety. The fact of the matter is, this year we have seen mass shootings in 38 states and the District of Columbia. So those are red states and blue states in rural communities, in urban centers. We've seen mass shootings that create these kinds of flashpoints But every single day in urban areas, Black and brown communities witness a kind of carnage, which if you cumulatively, it is a mass shooting every single day. And so what we've got to do is we've got to close ranks. We've got to remember the covenant we have with one another. And if we can't keep our own children safe, what in the world are we doing? So what I'm focused on right now on doing is trying to bring together my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. We passed bipartisan gun safety legislation last summer. It was modest but meaningful. It emphasized mental health care, expanding or supporting background checks, but it's not nearly enough. And what we've got to do is think about what is it that we can do to build on that progress. We can't wait another single day. We certainly can't wait 30 years to get some more legislation passed.
Yeah, that modest but meaningful reform that you talk about came after the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 students and 2 teachers were killed. It seems like the slaughter of children is often an inflection point for indignation and sometimes, very occasionally, actual legislation. But I mean, when you think about what's changed the most in and around these school shootings, it isn't that we've passed gun safety reform measures. It's that now all of our children have to do active shooter drills. I mean, I, as a parent, and I know you're a parent too, we both have 6-year-olds, I find it abhorrent that that's the change we made as a culture, is get kids used to the idea that someone may come into their classroom and shoot them to death.
Well, absolutely. I'm the father of a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, and ironically, last week as I was pushing my own colleagues to step up in this moment, to do more, I literally left the majority leader's office, and an hour later, there was an active shooting situation in Atlanta, which left my own children in a lockdown. And folks are saying that this is about freedom. It's a strange freedom that leaves our children on any random day in a lockdown. Mass shootings every single day is not the cost of freedom. It's the cost of blind obstinance. It's the cost of demagoguery. It's the cost of greed. And we have to do better than this. Dr. King used to say, we start to die the day we become silent about the things that matter. And we are literally dying physically and spiritually as we normalize this kind of carnage in everyday American life. And the fact that we can't get movement into Congress on something for which there's nearly 90% agreement among Americans means that we have a democracy problem. The voices of the people are being squeezed out of their democracy, which is why I ran in the first place. And I'm doing the best I can on this and other issues to help the people to get their voices back. If we can do that, we can get reasonable, common sense gun laws passed.
I got to ask you, as someone who knows well the inside of a church and has spent a lot of time there, longer than you have inside the halls of Congress, and I think you understand part of the force that animates American life. And you used the word normalize a couple times in this interview, and I agree with you. I think the violence is being normalized in American culture. I don't usually compare the United States to Serbia, but 3 weeks ago, there were mass shootings in Serbia, and 3 weeks ago, literally tens of thousands of people came out and protested and handed in 6,000 guns. People gave up their arms because they would not and could not abide the violence that was starting to blossom in their country. That is an unthinkable thing to happen in the United States of America. Why do we hold on to these guns knowing what they are doing to our children, to our society?
It's a very good question. But again, there is much more agreement among Americans on universal background checks, on banning assault weapons, on a whole range of things than we see reflected in the legislation that's getting passed in Congress. We have a problem, we have a brokenness in our democracy where the chasm between what Americans want, their differences notwithstanding, and what they're able to get done in their government is growing wider and wider. And that's what we have to address. We've got to address this issue, this kind of brokenness in our democracy where the people's voices are squeezed out. Think about it, as divided as we are, and we are, there are differences. There's nearly 90% agreement among Americans, according to a Fox News poll, that we should have universal background checks, and we still can't get it. So this is the work that I'm trying to get my colleagues to get focused on. We passed bipartisan gun safety legislation last summer. I'm not about to give up. We can build on that work and get something done for our children.
It is noble work, Senator. Let it not be fruitless. Good luck in the fight. Thank you for your time tonight. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia. Appreciate it.
Keep the faith.